So I'm sure you've seen your fair share of crazy women in your life. Well, buckle up because the story that I have for you today includes a woman who goes to unbelievable lengths to stalk the woman who her man was interested in. And did I mention that she was already married and so was the politician this woman wanted to sleep with? The only non attached, non cheating person in this whole story fell victim, and she was genuinely trying to do something greater, not only for her own community but also her state. So let's get into the sad story of a murder of the RTI activist Sahala Masud. Hi, welcome to Collectively Vigilant. I'm Dr. D. If you're new here, please consider subscribing to this channel. And we're also available on Apple and Spotify, and I will put those links in the description box below. So if you're the kind of person who loves getting into the nitty-gritties of the law, which criminological theory applies to which crime, well, this channel is the perfect place for you. And believe me, I can explain these things to you because not only am I a professor, I'm also a lawyer. So let's start with today's case. So let's begin with the last day of the life of our victim. On the last day of her life, Sahala Masud had just said goodbye to her father and her aunt and made her way downstairs towards her car, which was parked right in front of her house in the Bhopal region of the state of Madhya Pradesh in India. It was already past 11 a.m. and she was running late to join a rally that she had organized for a campaign called India Against Corruption, a nationwide movement which began in the year 2011 and ran through the whole year and ended in the year 2012. Now, cut to a few minutes later, this woman's aunt, Sahala's aunt, gets up and walks to her balcony, and as she briefly glances from the second floor, she looks down and she notices that Sahala's car has not moved at all and it's still at its parking lot. So the aunt rushes down to check on her niece because she was concerned that the niece might have fainted because the niece was actually fasting for Ramadan, and she was exceedingly worried. And the minute she goes downstairs, she realizes that her niece is slumped towards one side of the car. She's slumped towards the passenger side. And as she steps closer, she sees that blood is gushing out of Sahala's trachea. The police are quickly summoned because the family can tell that Sahala had already passed away, and Sahala's father was heard repeatedly saying on this day, "Meri bachchi ko maar diya. They killed my little one." So, cut to a few hours later, on the same day, an autopsy was being performed by 2 p.m. And by the evening of the same day, Sahala's body had been taken to the mosque for the last prayer. As she was being laid to rest, rumors were circulating amongst the people who were attending her funeral, and several possibilities were being discussed and circulated already. So, who was Sahala Masud and why was she ambushed and killed? Sahala was a 38-year-old business owner who had an exhaustive list of accomplishments. She was an environmental activist, she was an anti-corruption campaigner, she was a right to information activist, and she was well known in her community in Bhopal for not just her social work, but also because she earlier used to be a news presenter. Sahala grew up in a loving middle-class family where her father, Sultan Masud, was a librarian, and her family lovingly called her Shalu. Sahala Masud attended the illustrious St. Joseph's Convent and did her undergraduate work at Barkatullah University, after which she got a degree in journalism. She initially started out as a local news reader on a local channel, and then she tried her hand at organizing fashion shows. She was basically dabbling in several things, and then she eventually landed on event management, and that's what she basically made her business. Later on, quite quickly, she rose through the ranks and she started managing events where the rich and powerful would frequent a lot. Sahala's work gave her the opportunity to rub shoulders with several political figures, one of which was a man by the name of Dhruv Narayan Singh. Dhruv Narayan Singh hailed from a politically powerful family, and he was the son of the former chief minister of Madhya Pradesh, who had served as the governor of the state of Bihar as well. Sahala was closely associated with Dhruv Narayan Singh, and it's rumored that they were not just acquaintances. At some point, their relationship had turned romantic. After Sahala had, established herself as a successful business owner, she turned her attention to community activism, and she started sort of by filing a lot of right to information requests against corrupt officials, corrupt police officers, and she just wanted to know where the taxpayers' funding was going in her state of Madhya Pradesh. She took a lot of interest in environmental causes as well. She actually, in fact, launched a campaign against a tiger who had been killed by a drunk driver in Bandhavgarh National Forest, and the name of the tiger was Junjuru. And guess who killed Junjuru? It was the son of an elected minister. So Sahala, being the bold woman that she was, she held a press conference and she started demanding accountability, and she also started asking questions that you and I would ask. Something like, why is it that a person would be allowed to take their car inside a national forest? Why was the car allowed in the middle of the night? So she was asking these kind of questions, and a lot of people suspected that it might be this activism work which might have hastened her departure from this world. So naturally, one of the theories was that her murder was because one of these higher ups, politicians, police officers, somebody had been really pissed off with Sahala. Another theory, which was garnering a lot of attention and a lot of limelight, was because she was not just a campaigner or an activist, she was basically a multi-cause crusader, and she had pissed off a lot of politicians. And one of the theories which emerged was that Sahala had basically started asking a lot of questions. So yet another theory was that the diamond mafia had silenced her. Reportedly, Sahala Masud had written letters to various ministers informing them about the illegal mining of diamonds in the Chhatarpur area of Madhya Pradesh, which involved lots of people who were in politics and a lot of people who were in the police. So after her death, a few days after that, a 14-page letter was uncovered which detailed what Sahala had discovered about the misappropriation of funds. With all her activism coming to light, on August 18 of 2011, her death was actually discussed in the Indian Parliament, and then there was a lot of pressure in this case, and eventually the Central Bureau of Investigation, the CBI, was given her case after it had been discussed in the parliament. So the CBI basically appointed two of their best men on this case, a gentleman by the name of Keshav Kumar and another impressive gentleman by the name of Arun Bothra. So the first thing that they did was they tried to figure out what was the exact time of Sahala's death. So you remember it was around 11 in the morning when she was rushing out of her house, and minutes after that, her aunt finds her in her car slumped over. But this is not how police investigations work. They basically wanted to point out the exact time or around the time when she would be murdered, right? So the first thing they did was they took interviews of all the family members, all the neighbors, because this crime happened in broad daylight in a residential neighborhood. And they were quite sure that somebody would have heard something or seen something, so they started collecting evidence that way. Unfortunately, not a single person seemed to have seen anything which was strange or out of place on this particular day. So the next thing that Arun Bothra and Keshav Kumar made sure of was that they wanted a complete data dump of the nearest cell tower to Sahala's house. And on that day, interestingly, 1 million cell phones had connected to this tower on August 16th. It was quite the possibility that somebody who would have killed Sahala on that day must be carrying a cell phone. However, 1 million of them, so these men had quite a task in front of them. Soon thereafter, the CBI investigation uncovers that there was a man called Shanu Olanka and another man called Sakib, who, by the way, his alias is Danger. Interesting. And these two men were captured initially, and then they were asked, why were you in Sahala's vicinity on that day? What were you doing? Why was your bike found there? So on and so forth. And once the police and the CBI were investigating this, these two men, a guy called Danger, his name was Sakib Ali, and a man called Shanu Olanga, basically both of them brought up a name that the police had never heard of or even thought of before. They brought up the name of a woman called Zaheda Parvez. Zaheda, the woman, they said, was the person who had hired them. And get ready for a fascinating dive into this woman's brain. She's truly out of this world. So, Zaheda Parvez is a fascinating character. She was born to a middle class family in Madhya Pradesh, and at the age of 3, her own uncle, her mama, adopted her since mama and mommy, uncle and aunt, didn't have any children of their own. So she basically grew up in an exceptionally loving family where she was cherished even for breathing. That's the kind of family she grew up in. She attended the Christ Church Girls Senior Secondary School, and after studying and completing her school in Madhya Pradesh, she basically moved to Mumbai to study architecture. While she was at university in Mumbai, her parents actually found a fantastic match for her, and they arranged a meeting between Zaheda Parvez and this gentleman who had studied in the US and had recently returned to India, and his family was really illustrious, and this was an eligible bachelor by the name of Asad Parvez. And Asad's family was not just any family. Not only were they well off, they were actually in charge of several petrol pumps in the Bhopal area. So that's the kind of family that we're talking about. So her family had found her quite the catch. And Asad had come all the way back after finishing his studies in the US so that he could basically help out his sister and his mom with the family business. And this family, as I said, were quite illustrious. They actually lived in a home which is mind-blowing. They lived in a historic home, and it basically looks like one of those amazing things that you would see in books. I'll insert a picture here. And that home happened to be the home of Sir Syed, who was the founder of Aligarh Muslim University. And she basically moved into this house after she got married. Now, people around Zaheda Parvez did not actually have nice things to say about her. She frequently misbehaved not only with her husband, she actually spoke really harshly and in foul language with her mother and her sister-in-law. So we usually hear the opposite, where the mother-in-law and the sister-in-law are usually terrible human beings. Here the tables have turned. And her family was perpetually scared of her because of the things that would just fly out of her mouth all the time. She was very quick with her temper, and she would break things around the house. She would, in fact, lose her temper so frequently that most of the things in the house were broken and had to be frequently replaced. And other than having a terrible temper, she did have a job because she opened her own business, which was basically an architectural firm called ERA, ERA. And she would work there for extended hours. She would come back and then, take out her anger on her family members and, basically just fell short of breaking their bones but did everything else. She was quite short-tempered. And many times, her mother-in-law and sister-in-law were urged by community members that they should go and report her to the police, but they never actually did. How this story of Sahala Masud, our victim, is linked with Zaheda Parvez is quite fascinating. This all happens because Arun Bothra and Keshav Kumar, the two CBI officers who were working on this case, they were able to link these two women together with the phone data. In that data dump, it was revealed that Zaheda Parvez had actually employed Sahala Masud's assistant Irshad. So how these two women are linked to each other is quite fascinating. It seems like Sahala Masud was just living her life being a business owner, being an event manager, being a environmental crusader, fighting for tigers, basically filing right to information requests so that she could tell where the taxpayer money was going. So that's what Sahala was doing with her life. Zahida, on the other hand, was keeping an eye on Sahala because Sahala had gained the attention of the man who Zahida was in love with. And one of the ways in which Zahida got in touch with Sahala without ever letting her know that she knew the ins and outs of her daily schedule was with the help of Sahala's assistant, a man by the name of Irshad. So, and this really was quite a shocking revelation for Sahala's father, who was already in so much pain that he had lost his young daughter to such violence right in front of their house. He was also in shock when he heard Irshad's name, because ever since Sahala had passed away, had been killed, he was basically actually still paying Irshad his monthly salary so that he could support his family. So what had happened was, months before Sahala's murder, Zahida got in touch with Irshad and said, I will give you extra money. You tell me about her schedule. You tell me where she goes. You give me the contents of her contact. You give me the contents of her diary, so on and so forth. So this is how they got to know that there is a woman called Zahida who was interested in Sahala. But they didn't really know if this woman was just interested as a stalker, or as a woman who was competing within the same area for similar sort of architectural and design kind of things, event management. Was it like a professional rivalry, or was it something more? So they wanted to know. And basically, initially, when the CBI gets to know of the fact that Zahida is really interested in Sahala, they immediately thought that it must be because Zahida's husband might be interested in Sahala. Well, they came to know that Zahida's husband is basically the kind of husband all of us need in life, a one woman kind of man, who was not cheating on her by any stretch of the imagination. So nonetheless, because Zahida's name had come up, the CBI was able to get a warrant to look into. They were able to get the permission of the courts to basically search through Zahida's office to see if something's going to connect in the case of Sahala Masud. So the CBI walks into Zahida's office and they search her office in the presence of Zahida's husband, and also another person was there who was Zahida's accountant, a woman by the name of Saba Faruqi. So what do they find in this office? Well, wait and watch. They find 17 newspaper clippings which were all about the politician Dhruv Narayan Singh. They basically find two other newspaper cuttings which were about Sahala Masud being on a fast for her campaign, which was India Against Corruption. She also had written tons and tons of diary entries about her feelings for Dhruv Narayan Singh and the whereabouts of not only Sahala Masud, but also whereabouts of the man that she was in love with, which was a man called Dhruv Narayan Singh. So she's doing all this, and she's running her architectural firm, and she's making the life of her mother-in-law and sister-in-law hell. Okay, and she's almost beating up on her husband, and she's also supposedly taking care of these two children that she had with her husband, Zaheda Parvez. This is mind-blowing. This woman's multitasking skills are completely mind-blowing, okay? She was doing all this, and then they found multiple diaries. And within those multiple diaries, they also find a particular envelope. And within that envelope, they find a male contraceptive device that had been used, and Zahida was holding on to it, which is and then she was also holding on to a lock of hair of the politician Dhruv Narayan Singh, and on top of that envelope it said D's hair. So it's so weird, it's so strange. So they found multiple plans by Zaheda Parvez, in which she had written everything that she knew about these people that she was stalking, and their daily diary. She was also writing about all the times that she slept with the politician Dhruv Narayan Singh, and she slept with him over, let's say, a few tens of going into 100 encounters these people have had. And she literally wrote every single time they consummated on which particular day. And Zahida apparently was also having an affair with another man by the name of Ajit. So she also wrote about every time she had slept with him. And then on one particular day, after sleeping with the politician Dhruv Narayan Singh, she also sends him a text asking, "Do you love me?" And then he, of course, does not respond to that. Right. So over the course of 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012, Zaheda Parvez actually wrote down detailed notes of all her sexual encounters with the minister, detailed notes of all her sexual encounters with all her partners, and everything that these people are doing with their lives. So she was stalking everyone. And by the way, might I remind you that this one, 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012 was basically the heyday of early Facebook. So she might be doing that not only with Facebook, because Facebook was not the most advanced thing back then, but she was actually physically stalking them. So she would go around on her little Vespa sort of scooty all around, and she would actually follow these people around. So quite the woman that we're dealing with here. And in some of her diaries, she basically writes that every time the politician doesn't speak nicely to me, I basically fake cry. So she basically writes all that in her diary. And she's always, she also says, well, this will get me some sympathy with the minister. And by the way, might I remind you that not only is Dhruv Narayan Singh already married, the politician who was sleeping apparently with Zaheda Parvez and allegedly also sleeping with Sahala Masud, allegedly, right? So it's just so strange, because within the same diary entry, you can see how her emotions basically go from what a lark to what a plunge. And basically she sort of pines for Dhruv Narayan Singh. She also writes curses against him. It's all sorts of, the kind of yo-yo of emotions that one usually sees in emotionally immature teenagers usually. But here we are dealing with a woman who was basically in her 30s. So, well, I'm just speculating, but I think she basically shows traits of borderline personality disorder. Because she literally has the hallmark of all the things that come under borderline personality disorder. I'll discuss that in the analysis part, but let's go on with the narrative. So Sabah Faruqi was, do you remember the accountant that I told you about? Well, she was the accomplice with Zaheda Parvez, and she would help Zaheda basically stalk people. She would basically help her out. And one more thing that the CBI found in this basically investigation that they were doing from Zahida's office, not just the used contraception, not just the lock of hair, but even more, she had cameras everywhere. And every time she had slept with the minister, she actually had made sort of copies of that, and she had kept copies of her own sexual encounters with the minister and with other men. And the CBI, of course, would take all this with them, seize all this, and then they actually end up calling Dhruv Narayan Singh to the CBI office in MP. And they even call him to a CBI office in New Delhi so that he's away from, his elected area. And they show him a video of the minister sleeping with the stalker Zaheda Parvez. And this is the hilarious part, where all the CBI people are in the background and this minister is looking at a video of himself, and then the officers in the background sort of cheer and jeer every time what happens, right? So wow, quite the interesting story. So once they actually show the minister that Zaheda was basically doing all this, and she's accusing the minister of killing Sahala Masud, the minister basically lost it, and he had some really choice words to say about her. And that's when the CBI got sort of closer to understanding why Zaheda did all this, and they eventually arrested her. And you have to hear it to believe it. I will put some pictures over here so that you can see. Zahida was actually quite chatty. She would, when she was being taken to the court by the police, she would stop and sort of talk to journalists, and she would, profess her innocence, and she would say that these people are, using me as a pawn. I am not the one who has done this. So she's quite a vocal person. And all along, I feel so bad for her parents, who was so loving and so awesome to her when she was growing up. I also feel terrible for Asad Parvez's family. They seem like such lovely people who unfortunately were, linked with this sociopath of a woman who is basically not only cheating on him but also doing all these weird things. And clearly this woman had some grave mental issues. So the police zero in on her, and then they confront her, and eventually they find that she does give up the fact that she was the one who had killed Sahala Masud. Now, of course, this was a hard won battle. It did not come within a few weeks. Right, so what happens next is the police sort of close in around her, because all the men who had helped her carry out this killing of Sahala Masud, a man by the name of Saqib Ali, who called himself Danger, a man by the name of Shanu Olanka, another man by the name of Irfan Tabish, and another man by the name of Saqib, all of them had given her up, even though Zahida was basically yelling at the top of her lungs saying it's the minister DN Dhruv Narayan Singh who had orchestrated the killing of Sahala Masud. The police knew by now, and the CBI could actually prove that it was Zaheda Parvez and her insatiable ego which led to the killing of Sahala Masud, who was basically just an innocent sort of person who didn't even know that there was a woman who had this burning passion of jealousy against her, and she basically fell victim of someone who she probably didn't even know existed. So another strange thing, which basically was the last straw because of which Zahida seems to have perpetrated this crime, was you know how Indian ministers, when they have their birthdays, especially in larger or bigger constituencies or their electoral areas, they usually have these really large hoardings which says happy birthday to our favorite minister or something like that. I'm sure you've seen those. Well, it seems like on his birthday, Dhruv Narayan Singh had taken the time to sort of appreciate everyone. He had made time to meet everyone. He had made time to, he had gone out of his way to go and meet Sahala on his birthday, and Zahida just couldn't take it. Like, that was the last straw. This crime happened and she perpetrated it on that day. They had had several trial runs of trying to kill Sahala Masud, but she went ahead and got this done because she just couldn't take the fact that on his own birthday he had the audacity to go and meet Sahala Masud and not meet Zaheda Parvez. So that's one of the, ostensibly this was one of the reasons why she was pushed over the edge. So on 28th of January 2017, which was 5 years, 5 months and 11 days after the killing of Sahala Masud, Zaheda Parvez, who was the mastermind of this whole killing, was basically convicted under section 302, and she was sent to life imprisonment for murder. And so was her BFF. Her partner in crime was this woman called Sabah Faruqi. So Sabah Faruqi, Irfan, Saqib, Tabish, all these people were imprisoned for the killing of Sahala Masud. A life which was cut short way too early. And, I would love to know what you think precipitated this killing. Do we think that Zaheda Parvez is a sociopath? Do we think she's a psychopath? Do we think that this was done sheer out of sexual jealousy, or was there something else? Well, you let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And of course, I know my audience, it's going to be a very civilized commentary. So let's stop here for today. And I would love to hear from you this time. which criminological theory do you think applies here? So rather than me telling you this, let's set you a bit of an exam question. I want you to tell me which criminological theory would precipitate the killing of Sahala Masud, the victim who was actually doing something with her life, unlike Zaheda Parvez, who clearly was not doing anything other than just stalking people and making their life completely miserable. So let me know your thoughts in the description box below. And until I see you again, stay collectively vigilant.